have a very esteemed panel here, so we're going to talk about AI in business. So I'm going to keep whatever I'm speaking very, very little and get the best of this panel here. So a few things from an opening remark standpoint. See, AI has been in existence for a while, right? It's not a new thing. All of us are hearing a lot about this with what democratization is happening in the AI space, with what ChatGPT did some time back, with LLMs and what Sairam spoke about this morning. But fundamentally, what's happening is, I think, principally we're saying technology and humans will coexist to drive outcomes. We were training machines how to do things. Now machines will tell us how to do things, and we'll work in a world of constant learning and unlearning on both sides to make sure that we're developing an ecosystem where humans and machines will coexist with embedded technology to drive the right outcomes, right? So that's what's happening. So clearly there's a concept that, Abhay is very fond of, and some of us are reading up on what we call, collaborative intelligence, collective collaborative intelligence. So obviously teams have to get together in an intelligent manner to drive more complex problems, right? Fundamentally, that's what we're talking about. And it's not about one person doing things, but a collection of people, assets, tooling, technology, all comes together to figure out what needs to be solved for, and how do we need to solve things, and then how do we need to industrialize those things, which can then be scaled. We spoke about scaling in the morning, about large compute size and scale that is required. All of that is execution model, right? They'll all come through, when we've built something to solve problems. So that's what it is. So I think on this panel today, we're going to get some unique perspectives. We have investors who have been investing in large companies, startups, different ecosystems. They've sort of helped build organizations in the past life. Almost everybody outside of Gaurav is sort of in the startup ecosystem now. I think so. We'll get different perspectives from different domains and media. Gaurav's obviously he's sort of deeply engaged with consulting, mapping, skilling, coaching, and hiring talent. So we'll get a perspective about that from the business standpoint as we go along. From my opening remarks, I would like to start off with exploring this great topic that we have today from different lenses. So the first lens I wanted to bring out, and maybe I'll sort of start, Abhay, with you, and then maybe we can switch to Shanti for a minute, right? Is as we look at AI today and how it's sort of going to shape the future, why is it such a hot topic of discussion now than ever before? And what's happening in the world that you can relate to us, right? So maybe we can start with that question, yeah?
So the latest phase of AI is the last year, and which has been driven by ChatGPT. Now, if at all you look at all the pronouncements of people beyond that, GPT always existed. The only thing that happened is chat happened to GPT. What does that drive? That drives adoption, because you don't have to go through workflows, screens, things of that particular variety. So what changed was the user interface rather than the compute. And many of us don't quite focus on that. So we focus too much on the compute. But, why was 3.5 that crucial? Was because if you look at our brains and assume that each layer, and we have, let's say, 175 billion parameters, whenever you have a trigger, it picks up a layer. And so when the trigger comes back the next time, the layer is your think fast. And that is why GPT 3.5 was the closest to the human brain, because then whenever you get the triggers, it will be your think fast which will be the respond rather than the think slow. And so it is about the human and the machine being on same terms, which made it very interesting. And then when you allowed all humans to engage with it, you are engaging with the machine on equal terms. And that is the piece which I find the most fascinating, which is that for all the time that I've spent in the industry, a couple of decades, the human was telling the machine what to do. This is the first time that the machine is looking at the digital exhaust that all of us are creating and telling us who we are and how we are doing what we are doing and how can we do it better.
Totally, I agree. And obviously, I agree with your thing that it's sort of a topic of discussion on GI and what ChatGPT has done in the last year. So everybody in the organization is now running to sort of figure out, how do we catch this bus, right? So I wanted to pivot to Shanti a bit to get her in. Obviously, you're investing and working with a lot of early stage startups and incubating them. So as you look at startups and what's the thing you're looking at in terms of their AI investment structure and models? What are they doing differently today and what sort of assets are you looking at, right, from a business standpoint? Can you give some perspective on, on that? Because everything that we see today in the market is all about AI, right? You look at a startup, they start with an AI thesis and story. So how do you swift to that? How do you look at assets? And what is their value proposition eventually from a business standpoint?
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. I think what is interesting is that almost every investor, every fund today has a small team which is looking at AI, right? Which basically means that there is a lot of companies also building on AI, right? Because the supply also has to be there for people to look to founders. So that's the first point. And myself, while I am not an active AI investor, I am probably meeting every company today is talking about creating efficiency, creating algorithms, creating more data research, right, around AI. But I think as an investor, we have to break that down into probably 3 parts. So the first question is, are they creating foundational models around AI, right? Or are they creating applications on AI? And I think, while the word AI is almost like a buzzword, the way I think of it is like, the LLMs are almost like the operating systems, right? And the applications are like the applications sitting on top of the app store, right? And we have to be able to know that as an investor, you won't have too many LLMs which are going to win, right? Because you'll probably, even in today's world, you have probably, you have the Windows operating system, you have the Mac operating system, and you have, of course, the third open source, which is the Linux, right? I think what is interesting in today's technology world is people have learned from the mistakes of the past. As a collective universe, right? As a collective technology group, we've learned the mistake that you cannot have duopolies and you cannot have monopolies when it comes to just how technology is being controlled, right? And that is why you see people are already starting with free source AI. So Linux coming in much later because of the lessons we learned out of duopoly is already emerging mainstream in the AI world, right? So that is, so as a VC, when you look at companies, you have to ask startups what is the underlying layer on which you're building. And of course, when you look at the applications, what I believe is that deep use case verticals will start to emerge on AI, right? But when you look at the founder, does he have the domain expertise to build that application on top of it, right? For then some of us who have been programming and in the tech world, this is like cloud computing, right? Like what cloud computing did to server world, right? I think this is just a new standardization and a new protocol building on which you have to build. So I think the evaluation is a lot more difficult because we have not seen successful use cases of AI as yet. So we actually don't know, where the use case is going to come up from. Second is that you can't throw money and then get access to data. So this is a case where in a domain, if somebody goes in first, they might emerge winner because they will get access to larger data sets, right? So a little bit of change in how you think about investing when you look at AI companies. It's not the, okay, the founder is really good. Okay, all of that is great from a domain experience perspective. But I think the evolution and adoption of AI is very, very early, right? We are going to see a lot of money getting burnt in the space, because a lot of people don't know how to evaluate companies, right? So we are going to see the bubble of AI build. We are going to see some good companies go down till it kind of starts to mature. And I think everybody wants to play in the space, right? Every investor has to play in the space because this is like saying that I won't invest in e-commerce when e-commerce started, right? So you can't miss the wave.
Totally. I know you make a very valid point. I know I wanted to come to Kunal a bit in terms of his industry and where he is. But just before that, Abhay, you are investor yourself, and you also are on boards, Abhay. So from just looking back from your investment theses, how do you swift between what you want to invest and what do you think are companies that will do very well from your lens?
So, when you've been an investor for a while and you've looked through different cycles, you try and figure out what is the same and what is different. So, to my mind, what is the same remains at the stage that we invest in. There is a financial parameter called gross margin, which basically says when you're running something, what is the cost of developing that versus what is the revenue that you make on that. I think that parameter doesn't change. What is attractive is, you could have very high gross margins. So for a financial investor, what that means is that when you get it right, you will have lots of resources to be able to build the scale such that beyond that, it will be great for you. I mean, that's about all. But the point I was trying to make is that the simplest way I think about this is digitization is about unbundling something which you know and then rebundling it in the most efficient manner that you can. So if at all you look at us as a human brain, and that is the piece of cognition, we play different roles in our life. So you are an employee, you are a manager, you are a leader, you are a father, all those kind of things. So our mind reacts to it in different ways. So in some ways, you have inferences that you create when you are playing that particular role. And what the machine is able to do is it is able to simplify you as a human being's complexity and be able to disaggregate each role that you play, such that when you got to bring it in silicon instead of in the human, you can only bring the role which is relevant to the role, you can bring in only the competency which is relevant to the role that you're playing into the silicon. So you can take that part of you which makes you a great call center agent and have a co-pilot for that. So you will have to orchestrate the multiple co-pilots in your own brain as a human being. So where I'm coming to is AI is something which will be consumed only by a human. An organization and an enterprise cannot consume AI. They can create models. You do not consume the model. You consume the inference that comes out of a model, where the data flows. So when it comes to the investor, what he's looking at is, what is it that it drives the gross margin? And for me, the attractive piece is how many tokens are required to be able to fulfill the job that you do. And if at all you look at your input tokens and output tokens, and if you can do that efficiently, then you will build the most effective co-pilot, which allows you to build businesses in the way going forward.
Thank you. Wonderfully said. A lot of depth in how we're looking at this space today, Abhay. So brilliant. Thank you. Kunal, coming to your landscape, obviously you're in the business of communication marketing and you have a platform that you use to help startups and online companies to do very well. So give me a little bit of your perspective about what was your thinking process when you built the product and how you leverage AI technology to make it more effective. And that's one question, right? So that we could sort of deliberate and debate. Another piece I wanted to bring out is, as everybody's embarking of this journey on AI and stuff, right? So how are you, there's a lot to influence marketing, how you position things, right? So wanted to get a perspective of how are you helping organization to position well in this space as well. So maybe you can give us a little bit of both the elements, yeah?
To answer your first question, when we started seeing the whole conversation on the Gen AI and the fact that how globally Gen AI is actually able to actually reflect on a lot of action that required a lot of time in the fastest way. The first application that one could possibly see, and which became one of the first process in all our marketing firms, is how do we actually able to do things which used to take a lot of time in terms of evolving, analyzing, and creating an inference, utilizing the application bit of it. And we saw that a lot of organization today, the process that the Gen AI has actually given is that it has democratized the entire strategic thinking. So today, even a fresh graduate who's getting into communication business and somebody who's very experienced have actually seen various phases in terms of marketing function, in terms of reputation management. They will have the same access if they're able to trigger the machine in the right way to actually ask the right prompt. And that reflected in terms of one, that how do we actually look at it from a ops optimization perspective, and how do we look at it from a service delivery perspective. So if you look at in the current time frame, most of the organization like ours, we are looking at service delivery as the first go-to application in the AI. And how beautiful it is actually working now today is that if you look at any organization, their reputation is getting impacted on several spheres. So right from a traditional media to government and regulators, to trade partners, to consumer in general. And they have multiple platforms where they are actually interacting with a brand, an organization, and which is also contributing to their reputation, whether it's about their organizational culture, whether it's about what brand they are promising to their end customers when they are actually building their overall brand reputation. So today, what is available to us as a marketeer is that at a platter, we could possibly see the impact that each of these stakeholders are creating on a real-time basis. And with this knowledge available, there is much more that you can actually do quickly to actually mitigate a possible risk to any reputation. Also, you're able to do predictive analysis in terms of how you should actually look at protecting your possible organization for certain regulatory framework that might impact your business in coming time. So we are also now utilizing a lot of AI tools within our organization to now not only look at creating a framework in terms of building reputation, but also looking at possibly mitigating possible risk that the organization might have. And this allows us today to actually compete with any global firm which is a billion-dollar global firm, which has an access to tool which was at a cost today. And we are India's second largest, but it is difficult to actually compete with a global giant which has access to information, access to tools, and which can have analysis that require a massive human resource. Today, you have all that with a click of button, and this enables a lot of small, medium businesses massive opportunity to actually create a very, very massive outcome-based consultancy for communication to marketing and influencer marketing also. And coming to your second question, what we are actually working today with the team of Google, where we are actually building a marketplace for influencers and brands to work together. We are creating the entire AI modeling around how we can effectively work with large scale of individual content creators, where the enterprise today or the businesses today have started to just experiment with influencers, where they can actually do a large scale campaign of influencer. You see 1, 200 to 1,000 influencers who are actually creating content for a brand or an enterprise. You would see in times to come where 1 lakh content creators are going to actually create, and it will be difficult in a current model setup where you can actually work with these number of individuals independently to actually generate that kind of a content for a brand. And that requires a lot of automation, that requires a lot of AI to play on it. And that's where we are actually currently working on.
Thank you. This is very, very informative. So, Kunal, can I say that it's helping you reduce your time to market by 30-40% at least, if not more?
Yeah. I think our turnaround time has improved almost by 70 to 80% now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's like a great use case of how you can actually change things. So Gaurav, I'll come to you, but Abhay and I were talking just before this, and I was telling about a business process of that we used to run in our previous organization where we used to have 100 people deliver 100 widgets. Today, we're able to deliver the same 100 widgets with 2 people, right? So the power of AI can be so deep if we sort of embed that. The question then is not to say that what do we do with the 98 people, but we landed 100 times more clients who are doing the same thing. So eventually it's beneficial for clients, beneficial for us as an industry, and we're able to do much more meaningful differences, right? So I just wanted to close out with that from a topic standpoint. Gaurav, you've been in this space, getting talent in every organization. It's a board mandate now, if not anything, to say how much money is spent for AI. Do we have an AI strategy? Are we doing tech and everything? You keep hearing this all the time. So what are you seeing from a leadership hiring standpoint? What sort of pivots are happening to say, who are the type of leaders that we want to bring on board to help ride this journey and ride faster than the others, right? That's the whole space, right? How do we move faster than the others? So maybe we wanted to get your perspective on that.
Thank you, Prashant. So I think maybe just a place to start could be, what is leadership thinking right now as they look at AI, right? And the leaders that we speak to, I'd say 85 to 90% of them say there's huge opportunity, right? Clearly there's enough consensus around that and the reasons why are well understood. But 80% of leaders also say that we are unprepared, right? And therefore, I will link why they feel unprepared to what kind of leaders they therefore need, right? And the top 3 reasons for leaders feeling unprepared or their organizations feeling unprepared are, one, that those above them, do they understand enough about AI? Does my board, does my CEO, does my CXO understand enough about AI and what it really means, right? So that's challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 is a culture challenge. They feel, will this work in my context? Am I learning enough? Am I agile enough? Do I have enough risk appetite? Do I have a culture of experimentation? Do I have a culture of having fun with technology, right? Do I have a fast-fail culture or not, right? So the second barrier is around culture. And the third barrier, no surprises, is resources, right? I heard in the hallways, $5-6 billion of investment has gone into the country. So clearly resources will happen, but resources will always be finite, right? So those are the reasons. What we are solving for from a leadership perspective is to address these 3 things, right? So how do you address those? So one, looking for leaders who are inherently curious, right? There's only so many domain experts who can exist in any topic at any given point in time, especially a new emerging area. So the first thing that we are helping clients look for are people who are inherently curious. People who are always asking why, how does something work, what do I know, what do I not know, right? So that's the first attribute that we are looking for in leaders to address an ambiguous problem such as this. The second one, if you think about culture, to Abhay's point, saying, look, ultimately humans are going to consume this, right? So you need people who can connect, who can communicate, who can collaborate. Because this is also an ecosystem, just like what you see here. Yeah. Most leaders say that, look, I'm not going to do everything myself. I'm going to depend on an ecosystem, and therefore I need leaders who can connect, collaborate, and communicate, and drive the culture internally to make that happen, right? And resources, I think, are people, again, who will work smart, right? So I think the resource constraint is probably the least important, but the most important ones are curiosity and knowing and joining the dots, and the second is how do I engage and transform culture. Those are the attributes that are mattering today in the world of hiring for an ambiguous topic like AI.
No, thank you. This is very, very useful. So just wanted to stick on that point a bit and maybe bring another topic on culture. While you can drive culture top down, any thoughts on how curiosity, technical mindset and thinking has to also be built bottoms up, right? So maybe we can open it up for thoughts from others as well. But Shanti, your thought in terms of how we need to work both ways and sandwich in the between so that we can have people who can embrace this while it comes top down to drive this change, right? It's not just one dimension. Maybe we'll get your thoughts on that, yeah?
I think culture is more allowing people to take risks and not get punished for the risk they take, right? So I think if you're creating an environment where you are not giving space or not being forgiving about mistakes which happen because you tried to adopt a new technology, I think that's where then people don't want to experiment, right? So enough I think space for experimentation and knowing that, eventually there will be some wrong answers till you get to the right answer. I think that's the best way to encourage teams to be kind of looking at new technologies. But if I look at Let's Venture, we have built our technology on a very different, and we have not yet used AI as much even on our own platform, though we are sitting on a lot of data. I think sometimes it is challenging because when you're running a live system, and when you're running a business which is already on a very high speed, how do we then take out time and how do we then encourage people to actually go experiment with something new is something I'm personally also grappling with, and I don't have the right answer here.
No, fair. Thank you. We all learn with things. Abhay, what's your thought on that?
So I'm going to anchor this in, there is a lot which we can speak about culture. I'm going to try and articulate this in the age of generative AI. What does culture mean? I go back to, as a human being, the machine will show us a mirror from our digital exhaust about what we think we are versus what we actually are based on our actions. And I think that is the aha moment for each one of us as an individual. I think the culture is about recognizing that each one of us is an individual. In the past, the culture would have been similar to an SOP, which means that all of us should work together in a particular manner. I think the culture in the age of either digital work or AI is about accepting that each one of us is going to be different. And now I bring it back to what Prashant, we started with, which is the concept of collective collaborative. Culture is about we being more than the sum of all that we are, and collaborative about there are differences amongst us, and we should leverage each of the differences rather than trying to make an average of all of us. To me, that is the culture which will allow you to take the best benefit out of what Gen AI and AI will offer to you.
Got it. Fair enough. Kunal?
From a culture perspective, I do agree with both Shanti and Abhay on the points that they've actually put in. But I also very strongly feel that leaders really have to do a lot in terms of building that that culture from top to bottom. And just from a perspective of a mid-size organization like ours, you need to actually show your team how this is only going to actually evolve and get them to become better. One of the anecdotes that I would like to share is that in a agency, in a communication agency setup, you have a team which actually develop content, which develop leadership content, which develop corporate content. And the moment ChatGPT was introduced and people started to talk, one of the leader from the content team, they said, what is going to happen to us? Should we be scared? Would you be trimming down our number of people within the team? And I only said one thing to them is that we need to evolve. It is a tool that you need to use, but this tool needs to be seen as a tool itself. And if you start to see this as a tool, you'll not see this as a threat to your own existence. So from a culture perspective, you have to also understand the apprehensions that might set into your team, into your people, and you need to actually work with them in terms of helping them to get through that apprehension, help them to adopt to the changing technology that is happening around them, and see what they can do better with that. So I do feel that from a culture perspective, you need to actually work. At all level, you need to work, but you need to also, at a leadership level, you need to work in terms of helping them to navigate this changing ecosystem that is changing around us, and it's changing very fast.
Got it. Thank you. Your thoughts on culture?
I think a lot has been said. I'd add maybe two things. One is how do you, what I'd say, just normalize AI. Just make it part of a routine conversation versus a specific thing where there's a specific team locked up in a specific part of the building. right? But how do you normalize it and make it part of a normal conversation and rhythm of whatever a particular team or a particular individual does? I think normalizing AI will reduce the fear factor, Kunal, to your point. It will remove the myths around it. I think I agree with you. There is the value of communication and transparency, what I'd call sort of transparent experimentation, right? Let it again be open. What are the risks? What are the failures? What are we learning from it? And I think that will again make people bold and brave and less fearful of it. And the third piece from a culture perspective, I'd say, is each of us will have to disrupt ourselves. Say, what does it mean for me and what I do, how I operate and how do I add value? And say, what if there was a bot sitting across saying, I'm trying to do your job? I think we just become better at our jobs and sharper at it, right? And learn the power of leveraging AI versus being fearful of it.
Just on the apprehension and all those mental, I would say, dissonance that is happening between the adoption of the tool. There was one time when the team, which is our content team, also started to look down upon people who are using ChatGPT to develop their content. And it took us some time to explain to our best of the content. And it is because creative is an aspect when you are a creator, when you're creating content, when you're creating art, you always would want to actually make that content original. To help them understand that how even utilizing an AI tool, you can create a very original content, basis what your interaction is going to be with your machine, took us some time in terms of helping them understand and tell them that you should not be looking down upon a content writer who's creating content from ChatGPT. If he's utilizing the tool and effectively creating a original content for themselves and not a content which is used with a very, very normal prompt given to them. And what is the contribution that you're giving to the machine to make that original content for them. So I would say that from a culture standpoint, people need to actually also start to demystify and also destigmatize the creation part of this particular tool.
Thank you. So I have another question to the panel, and in the meanwhile, if anybody of y'all have a question, please raise your hand, and then I think the team's going to pass you the mics for any questions and thoughts. So that we can use make the best use of the panelists here. So one thing, an observation from my standpoint, and using that example, I wanted to get some thoughts in, is I was speaking earlier today that we are a large organization, MNC, rated as top for the last 15 years, best rated organization in the mid segment in the United States. They were visiting to embark on a new program of how to sort of work with different partners and ecosystems. And a large part of that theme was, how do you as an organization embed technology in everything that you do, and what's your AI journey and intent and how you're driving things, right? So they obviously visited multiple tier 1 organizations, a few tier 2 and some smaller organizations, right, like us. So, we had the chance to I had a chance to sort of meet them after the visits over drinks in the airport before we were on the same flight going out. So I happened to ask, what did you realize, right? So, their view was, frankly speaking, we got a lot of spiel, we got a lot of power of what people can do. But what we eventually figured out is the quality of solutions were more real in organizations which really understood our business and domain rather than technology in itself, right? So marrying domain to what's happening in tech becomes a very important part of actually driving really tangible outcomes, which mean, and that goes back to Abhay's point in terms of tokens, right? How much are you consuming and how much are you generating clearly comes from there. And also goes back to conversations in the morning of going inch wide and mile deep, or mile wide and inch deep. I think that plays a lot of time. So, from our experiences in this panel, I wanted to maybe call out and see if, are there any areas that you have experienced where you felt that this experience is really amplified, transformed, changed by embedding AI in any of the areas that you either interfaced or heard from customers or organizations that we interacted with? So I thought we'll go round robin and get a point of view from everybody. Yeah.
So at Let's Venture, we have a small team, right? It's about 67 people. And we actually work with a lot of data, right? Because we have about 400 to 500 companies who come to us every month. We have about 20,000 investors. So where we are trying to start to use AI is more on portfolio, right? Because today we have a portfolio of 900 companies. And while we would love to work with each of those companies, I think it is important to also know what intervention is required for each of those companies. That is number one. And second is for all the investors who've invested in those 900 companies, how can you give them a better real-time support when they come and ask us portfolio questions? So we are now starting to put together, like we are working with another startup. I'm a big proponent of that. I kind of go to my own portfolio companies. So partnering with another startup who's actually data crunching now and helping us build out support, build out data crunching models, build out a dashboard where I can access data. So that's where I am personally kind of involved in transitioning that. And I think I cannot not do it anymore, right? It is imperative because otherwise I'll have to add more people to the team, which basically increases my cost, right? Which basically goes back to what Abhay also was mentioning, that as a business, you need to ensure that you are not burning and you are at some point of time, your visibility to profitability is there, right? And the only way to do it is to adopt technology. So I don't see an option not to do it today. So over the next 6 months, we are kind of moving towards automating a lot of this.
Thank you. Abhay, any industry from your experience or any process that you think that you came across which has really been transformed?
Yes, living. I mean, I don't think there is any one process. I mean, every process that I am, as I live, has got AI embedded in it. And so I think the process that I can think about is living, because I am living as a human being. I was trying to get to what I mean by that. It is all the things which simplify my life for me. So for example, I have a calendar. I know where I have got to go. There's Google, which previously used to just have that. Today, the moment I open the calendar, it will tell me that you got these 3 paths to get to that place. Each path will be with so many minutes, this will be the traffic. Now that is embedded AI. And I wanted to give that as an example. It's the same, the number of, you are eating something based on the photograph that you will take, they will tell you your BMI is this, the number of calories that you are. So my point is, it is in every process that you have, that you are living, and I chose processes that are consumer oriented. But I can see in my role as an employee, I have that. So for example, we heard about a spend and expense company. All my spend and expense, there is a pattern to it, and something comes out of that. So it is every process as a consumer, every process as a role that I play as an employee, every process that the role that I play as an investor or a board member has got AI embedded in it, which makes things simple for me and allows me to do things in a faster manner.
Kunal, anything from you?
Yeah, for us, I spoke about it in my first point, that analytics as a communication firm, we are competing for talent, and data analytics as a talent, and data scientist as a talent. We're competing with best of the consulting firms, we're competing with best of the research firms, and it is very difficult sometimes to actually attract such talents now. And it becomes, and all of you guys, you're sitting here, would have used PR and communication at some point of time in your life, and you would have asked your partner a question in terms of how do you analyze the success of the work that you are actually doing. And you require a lot of data crunching, you require a lot of analysis to actually build that. And today, with how India is progressing, the people are ready to actually now even look at putting some money in terms of just understanding what is the outcome that you're creating. So the process that was lovely for us was the analysis that we can actually draw using the AI tools in terms of just showcasing the outcome that we are actually creating, the impact that we are actually creating through the work that we are doing for an organization. And these are all data-led. These are all data and analysis-led. It maps out the journey that you have actually covered in 12 months, how it has impacted your overall brand equity, how it has impacted the thought leadership of the person. So I think for us, this has been magical, that what we are able to do today, even without a specialized talent with using the tool by a very fresh graduate or a student coming out from mass communication college, it helps us to actually now outline the kind of success that we are creating for different organizations that we are working on. So that as a module is very magical for us today, and it is very helpful for us today.
The way I think about sort of value in any particular process or industry keeps shifting over time. If I was just thinking of the industry that I come from, if I just take one part of what I do around search, you'd say that the advent of LinkedIn should have killed us, right? But the source of value shifts from identify candidates to help me assess them and have insight on them, right? So I think the sources of value shift over time, and technology will work in service of making that value-added piece even more valuable, right? So I can see AI in our industry disrupting for sure, but helping us get smarter about people, get faster about people, but you can't replace the insight and judgment and intuition about somebody, right? So again, a human will consume it. Technology will just help us equip that human better. That's how I see it happening with us.
Thank you. I think this is very insightful. So we learned a few things, right? So clearly democratization is happening at much larger scale than what they have. Clearly enterprises need some things, but eventually people are expected to find solutions for those problems. I think we need to build a culture which can drive innovation, fast fail, adopt technology, embrace technology, and make it its best friend. As leaders, I think we need to know how to manage humans and machines together, leverage intents and data to sort of drive outcomes more meaningfully. Domain is prevalent, as much as enterprise is great, but unless you are marrying domain with tech, I think the right outcomes usually don't come out from where we are. And we also spoke about a little bit about, investment theses and how we're looking at, what sort of companies will fail. It's no more just the leadership that's going to drive organizations, but how do you look at profits? How do you look at underlying investments around tooling and tech, right? And we heard a little bit in the past from Raj in the morning from Zaggle that you need to invest in tech when it's not required, because when you have to scale, then you have something embedded in it to drive value. So clearly, are there right investments happening from a strategic standpoint becomes extremely important. So I think some great conversations from everybody. So, before, I know I asked, I don't know, I think we're short of time for questions, but if there's anything we can take up. But any closing comments from anybody on the panel? So what's in store for us, right? So in my view, if you put goals and outcomes, FY25, which is about 11 months from now, just this calendar, from a year concept. So what do you think, if you need to come back here in Jan and discuss about this topic, so what do you think is one change that's going to happen which is noteworthy for us?
I think we have to be more data-driven in how we take decisions. I think that will become as important. We were discussing this during lunch about intuitiveness, right? I think that is the last 10% of the final decision-making, but a lot of it will be guided by data.
Bye.
I can only speak about how I am thinking about how to experience the next 12 months rather than forecast something in it. Because the first piece is enjoy the time going forward and stop worrying about robots taking over. Maybe that will happen, but that's not happening in the next 11 or 12 months. So let's just enjoy this period of where we have productivity and simplicity going forward.
I'll talk more from a business standpoint. We are seeing influx of a lot of AI startups reaching out to us to building their stories. So next 12 months, I'll be really busy in terms of helping them to actually take their story out, work with them in terms of enabling them to actually reach out to a right set of stakeholders that they need to reach out to. And that is, we've already started to see that happening in last 2 quarters. So that'll continue to happen for us from a business standpoint.
I'll come at it from a glass half full perspective. Wow. Saying what can go wrong and how can we anticipate what can go wrong, right? We think about security, we think about biases, we think about other things that can go wrong. If we can anticipate those, especially as a country, if we can anticipate what can go wrong and get ahead, which we've done in so many other aspects of technology compared to the rest of the world, if we can get that right or make progress towards that, that would be a fantastic path to be on. I don't think it's an outcome, it's a journey.
Awesome. Thank you all. It's been great chatting. I like the whole thing. Enjoy the experience. It's a journey. Along the course, marry intuition with data so that we don't balance one or the other. And I think there's a great run for us going forward. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.